Hello and welcome to Mount Royal University's celebration of International Women's Day, hosted by the Faculty of Business and Communication Studies and Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. I am Dr. Rachael Pettigrew, and I'm an assistant professor in general management and human resources and in the Bissett School of Business. As part of our commitment toward reconciliation and decolonization, I wanted to begin by acknowledging that Mount Royal University is located in the traditional territories of the Niitsitapi and the people of the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta, which includes the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, and the Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, and home to Métis Nation Region 3. So I am here today with Anna Murphy, who is a Ward 8 council candidate, and I'm so excited to have you here to help us celebrate International Women's Day. I'm thrilled to have you here.
I am so excited and honored and humbled a little bit to be with you here tonight. Thank you so much for thinking of me.
Yeah, I was thrilled when you accepted the invitation, and I'm looking forward to our conversation tonight. So as we kick off the conversation, why don't I start by just saying, tell me a little bit about your path to politics.
Well, let me start by saying, the idea that I am any more remarkable than those who are going to get to join in on this conversation or watch it once it's, long after we've recorded it and it's posted and it's out there is profoundly false. My path to politics, my path to, getting out into the world started with my preteen self being told that she was not smart enough and was not rich enough. So politics was off the table. And that was after, being a young preteen who was, having, aspirations of being prime minister. At one point in time, I wanted to become president of the United States. However, there's this funny little thing called the Constitution. So that wasn't actually going to be a thing. But I thought, you know what, I'll settle for prime minister of Canada. But I was told that, you're not smart enough, you're not rich enough, you can't do it, you're never going to do it. So, why waste your time on it? And then in the midst of all of that there was this other reality that was playing out, which was me traveling a road to affirming who I was as a trans woman. And, there's this moment and I speak for myself personally, where you go from, having these big, these big aspirations of what you're going to do with life. And then you come out and your focus shifts to, just merely trying to survive. So going from, I'm going to be Prime Minister of Canada to, I need to find a way to secure meaningful, gainful employment, while the person on the other side of the hiring table is uncomfortable with me because maybe I'm not, to use an outdated term, passable enough. And, you're struggling to try and find, a way to keep a roof over your head, put food on the table, and somehow be successful in a world that is not built for you and is not, accepting or affirming of you. Obviously, we've made advances in that in the last, decade, since I, first started coming out in my journey. So it really wasn't until the last 3-4 years, really, where, I started to get more involved in my community, just volunteering, and, reconnecting with the place that I call home, Calgary, that it reignited the spark that, maybe I could, put my name forward, if only to run and lose and, maybe break a glass ceiling. But then as the conversations, started to take off, it became, I'm going to run and I'm going to win. And so, that's a really long way of saying my road into politics hasn't been anything but, straight, narrow, straightforward. It's been a road with twists and turns, challenges and barriers, much like anything in life is.
It's kind of a full circle moment as you kind of come into the shoes that you were really excited about when you were a little kid, interested in that. And now you're a grown up and you're kind of stepping into those shoes. It must feel wonderful.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think back to, again, I was no older than 12 when, maybe 13, but I was not that old when I was told that, you'll never be rich enough, you're not smart enough. Because I had the idea at that time that, the only way to get into politics was to do this typical journey that we see most politicians. You go into post-secondary, you take a poli-sci degree, you go into law, you become a lawyer, you do that for a little while, and then poof, at some point in time, you run in politics. So that was kind of, what I had envisioned of, okay, if I want to get to be here, I need to follow this straight path there. And, if anything, that is remarkably false. So anyone who thinks that that's how you go into it, you are so wrong. And I'm not even just an example of that. But if you look at, people like AOC down in the States, who was, involved in nonprofit and who was worked at a bar and restaurant prior to her running and winning. There is no clear, straight path to get in there. But it is. I look back on that and I can't wait to, say to that person, remember the conversation that we had where you said I couldn't do it? Well, look at me now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know our paths crossed too, because we were both involved with Ask Her YYC. I stepped in as a speaker and you were a participant in cohort. Were you in cohort 1 or 2 on that?
Cohort 1.
Yeah, so it's for those who are watching, it's actually a really phenomenal organization that supports the increased representation of women in politics. It's a nonpartisan program, and so it's those kinds of supports too that I think are super important for people to be aware of and to kind of bolster the confidence for someone to throw their hat in the ring, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's programs like that that really help women, or really any individual who otherwise has more barriers or challenges to getting out there, really feel inspired and empowered to get more involved. I am so thankful to the program Prepare Her through Ask Her, and then most recently, actually, I was accepted and chosen. Actually, more is the better word, to serve as the delegate for Daughters of the Vote through Equal Voice Canada. So it's more of a federal lens on getting women involved in politics and involved in their communities. But I'll be representing the federal riding of Calgary Centre over the course of 4 to 5 days through that initiative. So, really doing anything I can to get as many tools in my tool belt. Because I'm not a career politician. I'm, like I said, I'm no more remarkable than anyone who is watching this conversation. I'm a regular, everyday individual, like most are. And so, but getting the opportunity to engage in these spaces and, being afforded the privilege, because it really is truly a privilege, and learn and, gain that experience is incredible. So Ask Her, Equal Voice, all of those programs are so important, because it helps people see themselves represented.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you're running in Ward 8. What issues and topics are important to you and your constituents?
If we look at Ward 8, it is one of the most culturally vibrant and diverse areas of our city. You have everything from high income, affluent, remarkably well educated individuals. So say areas like Mount Royal, to those whom are experiencing tremendous adversity and austerity in our community. So if we go a little bit more towards, say, the Sheldon Schumer and the Safe Consumption site, or down by Alpha House, to everything in the middle. So those those students who those young students, much like some of the folks who will be watching our conversation here, to new families, to new immigrants. We really do have this cultural melting pot of such a vast array of various different demographics within Calgary. And so, I know that Calgary is hurting, that, everyday hardworking individuals are laying awake at night, filled with worry and anxiety about how do I keep a roof over my family? We have single parents who are worrying about how do I secure food for my child? How do I, put clothes on their back? How do I go back to work when, I have limited access to things such as childcare or affordable childcare? The unemployed, wondering how do I find gainful employment, which is going to pay a livable and viable wage that allows me to do more than just merely survive, just merely scrape by, but actually allows me to, succeed and grow within the community. We have office towers sitting at 30% vacancy rate, and that obviously impacts everything from the viability of our communities to the energy of our communities, right down to the bottom line, i.e. the revenue that our communities are taking in. So there are many issues that have been, that the community of Ward 8 has faced before the pandemic. Now you layer on the pandemic, and all of these issues have been compounded. So what we need to do is we need to get creative. We need to think outside the box. We need to put value towards the idea of supporting our small businesses, which we know are, the lifeblood and the backbone of our local economy. And how do we go about ensuring that they are able to survive and thrive in the days and weeks ahead, being that they are, the biggest employers within our community. Also, if you think about, when you go out into your community, chances are you're interacting with a small business, whether it's your local coffee shop, your local clothing retailer, whatever it is, to, looking at, the bigger issues of how do we go from, being solely reliant upon a single industry, such as our energy industry, understanding the relevance of that industry, but starting the conversation towards removing that reliance, that sole reliance, to how do we get some more, people contributing to that. So if we look at things such as technology, if we look at our arts and culture scene, I was watching, I literally spent the other day binge watching every episode of Jan, so the television series with Jan Arden. Best decision I think I've made. I would highly recommend it. It's incredibly funny, but what I also loved, because it's shot here in Calgary, and so getting to see that, it was incredible. Most of the time, you're seeing places like New York or London or Paris. No, it was Calgary. It was local Calgary landmarks. And I don't know, I was having a really enjoyable Sunday watching that. But that goes, back to an industry that we can, really boost. So our television and film industry, all the way to, things like artificial intelligence, our, clean energy industries, all of that. But we need to be able to be having these conversations and bringing people together in order to have them, and understanding that it's not my community, it's not my city, it's not my plan. It really has to be about our community, our city, and moving forward to reflect our plan, which is why, anyone running, whether it's me or any of my opponents, should be focused upon getting out and engaging, or, getting out as safely as possible. Maybe it's connecting on Zoom. So yeah, that's where I'm at on the issues for Ward 8. There's a lot facing us, but we are, if nothing, resilient, perseverant. We have that entrepreneurial, spirit within us, and we can overcome it. But it's going to take us doing it together.
It's a really diverse, socioeconomically diverse, diverse in 10 different ways kind of ward. So I think that's a great start to the conversation. I know, regardless of industry, and I know you're going to be modest and say that, there's nothing, you're the average person, and as we all are. But regardless of industry, or profession, seeing yourself reflected in the space is so important. So as a young woman joining a specific employer, seeing a female CEO gives her, in her mind, a sense that that's a possibility, right? Or seeing someone that looks like you in that space is important to think of what is possible, right? So tell me a little bit about what you think with regards to why representation, specifically in politics, is important.
Together, we need to open our eyes to this reality that those whom do not see themselves represented face. Despite our steps forward, which we need to celebrate, and we must not lose sight of the reality that there is still work to be done in order to dismantle this narrative which the lack of representation promotes, both directly and indirectly. And it's a message that lack of representation being that for some, they themselves do not have a place within their community, nor are their contributions and efforts valued by their community. And again, it sends that message both directly and indirectly. Representation matters because when those whom experience that level of adversity, intolerance, ignorance, discrimination, prejudice, violence, and hate, when those whom are perceived as less than look out into the world around them and see themselves reflected, it is remarkably inspiring and empowering. And that's why representation is important. And representation, to be clear, is not merely about the electing of more women to politics, or raising a pride flag, or marching in a parade. Rather, representation and doing it genuinely and meaningfully needs to be about putting actions and gestures to our words and our thoughts on it, so that together we build a future which can truly see us creating spaces free from adversity, ignorance, intolerance, discrimination, violence, and hate. For me personally, it's not necessarily about seeing people, whether it's raising a pride flag or trans flag. I want to know, well, where do you actually stand on the issues? Where, what are you doing to actually move the wheel forward? Because if all we're doing is, raising a flag or marching in a parade, again, that does matter because it sees yourself reflected. But we need to take it that step further and actually talk about policy, talk about the legislation, talk about the things that are impacting these folks. And so by getting more individuals in these spaces, so if we take women in politics, you get people at the table who have that lived experience and can bring that narrative to that space. Whether it's women, whether it's Indigenous individuals, people of color, LGBTQ2S+ folks, increasing the conversation, increasing representation is only to our benefit rather than being a downfall. That's kind of at the beginning when I was talking about this idea I had in my mind of, well, in order to get into this space, I needed to be a lawyer. I needed to have a poli-sci degree, all of these different things, right? Well, at the end of the day, especially now, we have enough lawyers. We do need them in government because they help, work out the legalities of legislation and policy. But we have enough of them. It's time to see just the regular everyday Joes and Janes and, anyone, just regular folks putting their name forward and running. Because that really is what government is supposed to represent, is you. So why shouldn't you be in there helping move the wheel forward?
Yeah, and I think it's multiple levels, right? It's people seeing themselves in that space and that's an option for them. But then also the benefit comes from the diversity of thought. So all the people at the table that are contributing their different perspective and lived experience, that makes policy better, right? And then it's also the strength of decision making that comes with that, right? But I also agree 100%. I say this in lecture a lot, which is it's not about just getting people in the front door. It's actually building community and spaces once you're in the front door that are welcoming and open, right? So it's not about just showing retention stats, but it's also about making sure that people are happy and productive and feeling psychologically safe in that space too.
Absolutely. You look at, if we look at from a business perspective and hiring, when you go to hire for your business as a leader, in business, whether you're a manager, whether you're a higher up CEO, hopefully you wouldn't be hiring a whole bunch of people who look and think and sound exactly like you, because your business is going to suffer. What you want to do is you want to reach out and bring those people who fill a void, fill a gap, where your weakness is. You would want to hire for that. You would want to bring someone in who is strong in that area. And the same should be for politics. And that's what, by having more representation in politics does, is you build up, all of these different, one person can't be everything to everyone. Like, that's just like, I in no way am saying that, because you can't. I mean, at the end of the day, when you go into politics or you go into leadership, it's not like you sign up, you raise your hand, and they replace you with a little robotic cyborg. Yeah. You are still a human. So you're inherently flawed. You can't be perfect. You can't do everything. But that's why you then, whether it's building your staff out or encouraging, whatever it is, encouraging others to run, or however you go about doing that. Because then now you build more people, you get those perspectives at the table. So yeah, I mean, you having a whole bunch of people who look and sound and do all the same things it doesn't work in business. It doesn't work in politics. It really doesn't work in life. Like, if we think of even our personal lives, do you have a whole bunch of friends who look and sound and do the exact same things as you, or do you have I mean, some people might. I would find that boring personally. Also annoying if I had a whole bunch of people who looked and sounded and said everything like me. That'd be terrifying. But yeah.
No, I think it's kind of like from a business perspective, how can you meet the needs of customers if on the planning phase you're not taking in those perspectives? And just like in politics, if you don't have those diverse voices at the table, how do you meet the needs of the citizens, right? So how do we best pull up everyone at the same time? And having that diversity, I think, is really important. So shifting gears a little bit, I know that politics these days is a little divisive. In fact, not just politics, but kind of, it seems like the world is a bit divisive these days, with people kind of picking a side and digging in their heels and only wanting to see things from their point of view. And I know you're kind of entering this landscape, but what's your take on how we overcome this divisiveness that we're seeing?
Well, first and foremost, there is no silver bullet. And I said this in a conversation at the beginning of the week, actually, that, there is no silver bullet. But with that said, our ability to find common ground does not mean that we are incapable of standing by the power and courage of our convictions. Rather, what it does is it sees an individual realize that the responsibility of their leadership goes beyond any one individual, and that to be an effective leader is to be not focused upon your own self-interests or the interests of a select group of individuals. And perhaps more to the point, it is time that we maybe put down our virtuous and ideological swords and rather see ourselves build a bigger table, meeting our neighbors and communities where they are at, going where they are, rather than sitting, waiting for them to arrive where we want them to be, and together building and forging that collective path forward. I also said this in another conversation, just a private conversation, but I said, what are we so afraid of? That by engaging in robust conversations, we might actually accomplish something? It's time honestly, it's time to put the empathy back into politics, and for that matter, leadership. It's time to put humanity back at the table of influence. And, we need to see those who are afforded the privilege of serving in leadership, whether that's political leadership, whether that's business leadership, whatever kind of leadership it is. We need to see those folks investing in this idea behind genuine and authentic engagement, but themselves having to realize that they have to go a step further if they want to see their investment mature. And that step further is the requirement of them to go forward and act upon and bring forward that meaningful and tangible change. So it would be one thing if we were having a conversation tonight and, I was, gathering ideas or listening or hearing people's perspectives. And then, let's say I was, CEO of a company, and, I got my employees together, heard their concerns, heard how we could improve. And then I walked out the door and I went golfing for the rest of the afternoon and did absolutely nothing. What was the point of engaging? You may as well have just have engaged. You may as well have just gone and played golf all day. So that's why I say, meaningful and, tangible change has to be that missing component of genuine and authentic engagement. You can have conversations until the cows come home, but if you're not going to do anything with it, you may as well not even have the conversation. In which case, then one would ask, then why are you in government? Or, aspire to be in government. But, together we need to move past this current climate of increasing polarization and division, seeing this us versus them, seeing politics not continue like a raging disaster, which destroys everything in its path, where, every argument or every difference of opinion breaks down into this non-victorious war, which pits against, neighbors against neighbors, families against families, coworkers against coworkers. That's not how it's, again, if we go way back to, when it was first put in place, that's not kind of the idea behind, democracy and representative government and, freedom and all of those wonderful things, which that's a much bigger, broader conversation. But, there's a quote by Abraham Lincoln, and it's stuck with me, but he says, "I don't know that man, so I must get to know him better." And that sticks with me, because it's like you can have a conversation with someone, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with everything that they're, again, I'm not saying, you're going to go sit down with, some individual who's remarkably horrible. No, but, just having conversations with your neighbors or your coworkers who may have a difference of opinion or different perspective or different lived experience, and just being able to hear that and realize that, I can remember one of the sessions in Ask Her, and one of the mentors was an individual who, different political ideology. And I went into it, kind of sort of being like, yeah, I'm not going to agree with this person. I'm not going to take anything from this. It's going to be horrible. I'm going to have to, grit my teeth and smile. And first of all, that is a horrible way to go into any conversation. Like, just there's a tidbit for you, kids. Yeah, don't go into any conversation that way. That's terrible. Because what ended up happening in that conversation is, while I disagree with the individual's maybe stance on policy, I disagree with the individual's way onto which, their party is leading, I didn't disagree with how they themselves went about, wanting to engage or had ideas of engagement, or how they went about, winning the election and getting out and connecting with the community and the value that they put into that. I didn't disagree with that. I also, they have two cute kids at home, and, again, that's where I say, we need to get the human aspect of it. We need to realize that, these are other individuals, just like you, just like me, just like anyone. and we can disagree with policy. We can, go back and forth and try and, do better that way. But at the end of the day, these are people. And yeah, again, putting the humanity back into it, being able to have a conversation again.
Yeah. I love it because I think I like how you said build a bigger table. I think that's really important. And I think too, we do lose humanity, and we know that losing humanity or seeing people as human is a massive risk, right? That's where things start to really break down. But thinking about having that respectful dialogue, I think that's such an important message as we all dig in our heels in our own little echo chambers, right?
We do. And, and that's not to say that, again, I literally just gave an example. I walked into a conversation and I was like, oh, I'm going to have to, bite my teeth, grin and bear it. It's not going to be all that great. And it wasn't. So I'm not perfect. I mean, as much as I talk about it, I do. I put lots of value into it, and, do my best. But again, that's the human aspect. I am human, believe it or not. I am going to slip up. I am going to make mistakes. That's the reality of it. There's no imperfect. Some, mistakes are worse than others. But, for little things like that, you have to allow, but if we put value into, building the bigger table, meeting our neighbors where they're at, going where they are, rather than, so I want you to be here, you're here. I'm going to stay here and hope that you just come to here on your own.
Yeah.
Okay. I grew up in rural Alberta. So we would oftentimes have to, the horses would be out in the pasture and you'd have to get them into the barn, or, we'd be herding cattle for branding or whatever the case is. You didn't stay at the ranch and just hope that, the cows, herded themselves or the horses came in by themselves. No. Oftentimes what you did, especially for the horses, and this is an analogy I use often, is you would get some sugar or some oats or something, and you put them in a little bucket, and you'd go, out of the gate a little bit, and you'd jingle the bucket, and the horses could be, yards and yards and yards and yards away, and you would see them. You would see their ears stick up. They'd look. And they would come running. They would just come running. I don't know, they can smell it, they can sense it, whatever it is. But again, if you didn't do that, and that's to say, that's, when I talk about meeting folks where they're at or going where they are, I always think of that analogy of, it's kind of like herding horses. I need them to get into the barn because that's where they need to be. They don't want to. They're enjoying life out in the pasture. They could really care less. But when you get that little bit of oats, you kind of coax them into where you need them to be. I often get told, some of my rural analogies. They're like, oh my gosh, it's like, well, hey, I grew up in there. I use a lot of them. Some conversations are worse than others for them to come out.
It's an awesome Alberta example. I love it. Yeah, and I think it is too about having the important conversations is stepping out of your comfort zone and being willing to do that, and taking it. And your example of like shaking the oats is, it takes action on my part to step into creating that conversation and that dialogue with someone, right?
I can remember, a time. So a lot of my, previous, past experience, especially in the last few years, has been getting the privilege to volunteer with some phenomenal community organizations in Calgary. And I can remember when I got, asked to be, director of fund development for an LGBTQ2S organization. And I was thinking of who I wanted to approach. And I'm all about, go big or go home, like just shoot for the stars. Also, when you want to get money, it's good to go with, the people or the brands who, are successful. So, but again, you also have to be genuine about it and heartfelt about it. And there's an art to it. But anyways, I can remember, some of the brands that I put forward, and I can remember some of other members of the executive going like, you're never going to get them. They're never going to, they're never going to be interested. You're wasting your time. It's never going to happen. Well, if that's how we approached every conversation, then holy moly, I probably wouldn't be all that interested too, if that's how you were going to come to me. Yeah. most anyone that I reached out to, because again, I, try not to, blow fluff their way. I try to be genuine about it. And most of them were brands that either, I'd engaged with or knew of, and also do your homework. Like if you're going to go and sit down with someone that maybe you don't know a whole lot about, Google folks. I'm sure every student who's watching this knows Google. Do your research. It can help. Honestly, it can help. But no, I mean, if that's how we approach it, it's never going to happen. They're never going to do it. Why bother? You're wasting your time. To me, those are the conversations that I want to have. I want to have the hard conversation. Bring it on. And part of that is from, my lived experience as a trans woman. I've had a lot of hard conversations in my lifetime, and hard conversations that have lost me a lot, whether it's, relationships with family or jobs or, opportunities, whatever the case is. So that's why hard conversations don't scare me. Someone telling me no doesn't scare me. And it shouldn't scare anyone who's watching this conversation or going forward. Don't let that scare you. Let it empower you. If you have a hard conversation, it doesn't go the way you thought it would, or you walk away going like, what did I take from that? You might not know right away, but maybe down the road, you think back and you're like, I remember I had that conversation. I didn't turn into a puddle from it. I survived. I did make it through. And here's what I learned from it. Even if that's all you can take about it, and even if it's, many years down the road. But yeah, that's part of our problem with the discourse now is both sides, whether it's, left, right, wherever, no one wants to have a conversation anymore, or they will only to a point where they get presented with a difference of opinion, a different perspective, something that doesn't align with, them. And again, I'm not talking the like hard line, values. I mean, if somebody I was sitting down in a conversation was, using, terrible language, and it was like unmovable, that conversation's probably not going to go anywhere. Move on. But again, I'm not talking that. I'm talking our, regular general conversations. But nobody's willing to do that. And one of the best places to see that is Twitter. It happens all the time. You will see it. You'll be like, I read it all the time. Like I have a presence on Twitter. I put stuff out there. I've learned very early in my political career that Twitter is not the place to have deep, comprehensive conversations. Because the moment you try to do that, first of all, you only have 150 characters.
Yeah.
If this conversation has proven nothing, it's that I can talk. Talk a lot. There we go. That if people ask why is she going into politics? I don't know, because no other career allows me to talk so much. Right. But I learned very on. It's like you try and have a conversation or do it. And I know, like you do threads or this or that, and there's a way to do it. I don't know. I don't have time to do that. It's like, I want to put something up quickly or no, try and do it and then move on with life. But more to the point, it's like everyone's not on Twitter. Everyone's not on Instagram. Everyone's not on Facebook. And it wasn't, and this is, back to your, talking about my path into, politics or where I am. It wasn't until getting out into the community, volunteering, seeing what was going on, getting engaged, physically engaged, not sitting on, your phone or your laptop. No, get out there, get engaged, see the world around you. It wasn't until then and advancing in that I went, hey, I could, I love this community. I'm passionate about it. I want to do more for it. But yeah, it's, you need to look beyond just what's right in front of you.
And too, because all of those platforms are kind of cultivating a very myopic view of the world for people. So really getting out and meeting different people and getting exposed to different ideas that you may not get exposed to on those platforms just based on the algorithmic, strategies of them, right?
Yeah. I had someone message me and they're like, hey, you've been quiet on Twitter. Is everything okay? I message back. I'm like, really? I just got done posting like 6 times this week.
Yeah.
I'm like, how much more vocal do you want me to be? But it's because it didn't show up because of the algorithm or whatever. Like, I'm not a social media influencer. So, but I'm like when I got it, I'm like, really? I literally just got done. And it was right after I had tweeted, a picture of, me sitting on a Zoom call on, anti-racism and oppression for Daughters of the Vote. And I was like, really? I literally just posted. Like, I didn't. How much more vocal would you like me to be on, I don't have a team tweeting every, 15 minutes for me. It's just me. And I do also have other things going on in my life rather than just on Twitter.
We would just sit there all the time. Yeah.
Oh, you can. And I mean, hey, I totally see the value and why, people hire those social media experts, because it is a full-time job, because you are going through it all the time. You're having to create content, do the thing. It's a lot. And like, there is a reason why, people are literally sitting like this. Because it's time consuming. And for me, like, I don't know, I get creative burnout with it. I'm like, can I not just tell them that it matters because it matters? Like, can I not just make it that simple? No, because the people want a little bit more from you than that. Like, it's, on representation matters. Like, when we were talking about that a few minutes ago, I was, talking to a friend of mine before this conversation, and I said, I don't know, because it's 2021 and we're tired of having the conversation. Like, why are we still in 2021 talking about why representation matters? Like, we haven't figured it out yet, really. But, obviously you can't necessarily, people want more than that. So they want more, I don't know, they want more theater than that in politics.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I could talk to you for 3 hours, but just love our conversations. But I'm going to end with one question. So the primary audience for this event is current students and recent alumni. And so some of them might be watching this and interested in politics or beginning their career. What advice would you look back and give your younger self right at that stage of your kind of launching into your career or launching into politics?
Oh, well, I thought about this question a lot. And because this question was sent ahead, and my mind kept going to kind of a two-parter. So first and foremost, to my younger self, I would start by saying, there are going to be moments, along the road, the path, that are going to be remarkably challenging. They're going to be very, barriers, potholes, twists, turns, road closure signs. And there are going to be moments where you're traveling down that road or you're in that tunnel and you can't necessarily see a light at the end of it. And you're going to get close to, wanting to, be done with it. But, I'm here to say that it does get better. I know, now it's such a widely used term, but it really does. I mean, if you would have asked me, heck, 5 years ago, if I would be sitting having a conversation like this, if I would have been asked by a university to come and to be able to, say my piece, to students and alumni, I would have completely thought you were lying. Because at that time, I was going through a tremendous amount of complications after surgery, and it just, there was no light at the end of the tunnel. And there have been a couple, periods like that. But yeah, so I would start by saying, no matter how hard the road gets, it does get easier. It's kind of like when you're driving through a snowstorm in, down a prairie highway, and you're, driving so slow and you're like, will it ever let up?
Yeah.
And, you're just about to, you're white knuckling it all the way. And then all of a sudden there's no more snow. Usually in between, Olds to Calgary is usually when it breaks up. Um, but no, so that would be what I would start, is because, we've been through a pandemic. We've been through an economic downturn. We've been through so much in this last year. And so I can only imagine, some students who are going to be watching this, that takes its toll. Also, you're trying to study, you're trying to finish up things, you're worried about your family, your loved ones. I know myself, I have a grandmother who's my biggest support, who's in the hospital, and has been for the better part of a month. And so it might seem like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Like, when is it going to end? And it does get better. And you just have to, reach out, use the resources that you have, friends, family. Maybe, you don't have the strongest connections there. That's okay. I've also been there. Reach out to, the organizations that are out there, such as Distress Center. There's also places like Skipping Stone if you are trans or gender diverse. But, heck, reach out to me. I'm always, here to lend an ear. But yeah, that'd be the first piece is, no matter how hard the road gets, it does get better, honest and truly. The second piece, in terms of anyone wanting to get involved in politics, if you have a genuine, sincere, heartfelt passion and desire to serve your community, to bring forth change, to move the wheel forward, you're qualified. You don't need a political science degree. I know. Teachers are going to love this piece, but you don't need a political science degree. You don't, and I'm saying you don't need. I'm not saying don't do it. You don't need to have a big fancy diploma on the wall. And I say this as someone who has gone to attain all of those things because I thought I needed them, but you don't. All you need, the foundational piece of a good politician or anyone who wants to serve their community, is that desire to serve. Because at the end of the day, it is a tremendous, and I say this as someone who has never been elected, but it is a tremendous honor and privilege that those who have been elected and are elected are afforded in their role. And so if you have that genuine passion and desire to do right by your community, to see your community thrive and be successful, you're qualified. Put your name forward, run. We talk a lot about asking her. She's been asked. Now what we need to do is support her, fund her, be behind her. And that's not just in politics. That goes in every space where leadership exists. They've been asked, they're there. We now need to have their back. And so that's why it's like, if you're interested in doing it, do it. Put your name on the ballot. Get involved. Volunteer, even if you're like, I don't know, do I want it? Because I wouldn't blame you. Some people might look at politics and be like, who in the heck would ever want to do that? Apparently me. But even if you don't know where you fit, or it's like, well, do I want to be a candidate, or do I want to help, or volunteer? This is a prime year for volunteering in politics and getting involved, because we're in an election year. So look out to candidates, platforms, see who you align. And if you don't find anyone who you align with, that tells you need to run. If you do see someone who you're like, oh yeah, I support that, but I don't want to run, then reach out to them and be like, hey, how can I help you? What do you need? How can I get you elected? So yeah, that's my advice. There will be challenges in life. That's life. Some of them are remarkably more difficult than others, and know that it does get better. And if you want to do it, then do it. Put your name forward, whether it's politics, whether it's, I don't know, be bold, be daring, be aspiring, and just live your life being a badass. Just be you.
Yeah. I love that message. I mean, I think trying to instill that in students to like dream bigger, have bigger expectations from themselves, step out of the box that they've been socialized or parented or, placed into, or their own expectations, and just live life ferociously, right?
Like,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, you never know where your life is going to take you. Like 10 years ago, after I had dropped out of college for the first time, because of, mental health reasons, all various different reasons. Anyways, to digress. I thought that, my life or career path would be in fashion, in retail, visual merchandising, this like scatter my ashes at Bergdorf kind of sort of, scenario. Devil Wears Prada kind of sort of thing was more what I was going for. But yeah, you never know. Like, I don't know. Life is too short. Life is too short. Just say yes to anything and everything. This was my 2020 resolution, actually. And then obviously 2020 hit was, say yes to everything, have a hell of a time doing it, and see where the chips fall. And then 2020 hit and I got to sit at home like everyone else who's watching this did. And I was like, well, that was a great year for that resolution. But it stuck with me. It's like, you know what? Just do it and have a hell of a time doing it.
I think that's possibly the very best conclusion that we could have. I love your heart. I love your perspective on things. I am going to have so much fun watching as your career progresses, and watching where you are in the next few years is going to be a real pleasure. But I really want to say thank you for helping the MRU and the Business and Communication Studies and the Women Entrepreneurship and Knowledge Hub celebrate International Women's Day. It's been our gift, and I am so excited for students to hear your voice and share in this conversation.
Oh, well, thank you so much to you, to MRU. Honestly, like, I was totally, when I got the invite, I'm like, okay, well, hopefully I don't put students to sleep. Secondly, I'm like, well, I'm probably the same age as some of the people who are watching this. They'll be like, well, what can I learn from her? And it's like, oh, fair, valid point. But no, honestly, it was an honor and privilege. And I know I say that a lot, but it's because I mean it. And humbling to be invited. And yeah, I always love when we get to have conversations. We could go on for 3 hours. But no, thank you so much to you and MRU for extending the invite. I just wish it could be in person. And I said it to you before we started. I'm like, I wish there was a Q&A after this so that, students could, put me in the hot seat.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to make those arrangements. I think we're going to, when we're able, I think we're going to need to have you to MRU and have you in person. I would love that. So watch what you wish for.
I know. The time's going to come and I'll be like, whose idea was this? And you'll be saying, remember? And I'll be like, oh yeah, right. And it was recorded. I can't even get out of it. It was recorded. No, I would love that. I can't wait. I can't wait for it.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You as well.